7 years after Triple H first announced that he planned to expand NXT globally, I'm starting to think it is finally going to happen, but in a very different way to what he originally planned. But is it a good thing or is it a bad thing? That's what we are going to be talking about today. Firstly, let's talk about the original plan, because in early 2018, Triple H did this presentation where he announced that he wanted NXTs and performance centers all across the world in all of the continents. And this all started with NXT UK, which, as we know, at first was a huge success, and it was a great product, there's no doubt about that. But of course, when the pandemic hit, it failed, and from there they announced NXT Europe, but then we never really heard anything about it. So the gist of it is, the NXT UK project very simply failed, and of course, like I said, the outside factors such as the pandemic undoubtedly played a part in it. But what NXT UK played a part in was killing the UK independent scene. Because seriously, out of nowhere, they basically just signed up every good wrestler, almost every good wrestler on the UK scene, and this made it really difficult for UK promotions to survive, and many of which didn't. And then of course the pandemic hit and it just killed UK independent wrestling completely. Thankfully, since the UK independent scene has been revived and it is currently better than ever, but would it have been revived if it wasn't for NXT UK being scrapped? A lot of promoters who I've spoken to don't think it would have been. But like I said, from here the plans were basically scrapped for a few years. NXT Europe was announced, but we haven't really heard a single thing about it since, and even Shawn Michaels has gone on the record to say that he has no idea what's happening with that. And this brings us to just a couple of months ago when WWE ID was announced. In case you haven't heard about WWE ID, basically what it is they are offering these kind of pre-contracts to wrestlers who are on the independent scene, and it presents them a quote-unquote clear pathway to the WWE if they are successful. Now, we're not entirely sure about what these contracts actually entail, how much they are being paid, if anything, and also if they're able to do extra work for AEW or New Japan Pro Wrestling, but it is presumed they can't. And while as of right now these WWID contracts are only for the United States, they are now starting to scout the UK, with the head of scouting for WWE who was in the UK last week, and I know independent promoters are being spoken to about it as well, so there is a clear plan to expand. But here is the big kicker, and something which I think is going to be an absolutely huge step in WWE's globalization of their developmental system. This past week at the Royal Rumble, it was announced that the old defunct Evolve promotion would be returning as a weekly show for WWE. And this would not only showcase talents who aren't being used on NXT, but it would also showcase some WWID talents as well. And at this point, it became clear to me, I think WWE's current plan is to use developmental schools as well as the independent scene as its own developmental system. Basically do what they were planning to do with NXT UK, but having independent promoters and promotions do it for them, therefore keeping the independent scene alive, but using it to their advantage and having a level of control over it. With long-term the plan being to have their own shows, such as Evolve in the US, showcase these talents, and therefore they are also still profiting off it while keeping the scene alive at the same time. So let's start with the positives of this plan compared to the previous one. I mean, the huge one is this is so much better for independent promotions. There's no doubt about that. Whereas before talents were basically just being taken from the left, right, and center, now they are benefiting from this. They can advertise some as their top stars as being WWE ID athletes, and that's a big deal and could get people to attend their shows. And don't get me wrong, I'm sure there's some terms that WWE are allowed to use whatever content that they film with those stars or something like that, like they could use it in clip form. But if they do use it, I'm also quite confident they'd credit the promotion too, so it's another win-win. Secondly, this is fantastic for training schools. Whereas before they were going to be replaced with these performance centers across the globe, now they are these performance centers. So it's great for their business as well. Plus, if they can use the WWID affiliated school as like a slogan, that's a big deal for people coming in and using your business. And thirdly, it holds these schools to a higher standard. Let's face it, over the years, there's been a lot of wrestling training schools which haven't been up to the standard when it comes to safety and other stuff. But if you're affiliated with WWE, well, you better believe you're going to have to be. So, this all sounds fantastic, right? And on paper, it does. But there are quite a few big concerns. And by big concerns, I mean WWE could well control the entire wrestling business. And I don't just mean because they're the biggest promotion, but I am saying that I believe there is a possibility that they will literally be able to control the entire wrestling scene. Let's be realistic for a second, right? If you are WWE and you have a relationship with one of these independent promotions, you are letting them use your ID talent, then you are going to want your ID talent to be their top stars. This means that all the ID talents are going to get the best opportunities. And sure, if there's a young star who's really breaking out and looks great, they'll offer him a contract too, right? But what if you only want to be on the independent scene? You don't want to sign one of these ID deals because maybe you want to go to AEW or New Japan. Well, I think that will mean you'll get less opportunities and you'll be seen by a lot less people, making that dream a lot less likely. This means that if a company wants to try and rival WWE, well, they're going to have to find a way to develop their own stars because the independent wrestling scene, well, it's pretty much just going to be controlled by WWE. For example, all of AEW's homegrown stars aren't actually homegrown. They're all from the independent scene. And if WWE ID existed during those times, and those stars only got the opportunities which they did to showcase themselves if they signed those ID deals, well then AEW wouldn't have been able to sign them in the first place. And don't get me wrong, AEW and companies such as that will still be able to sign WWE rejects, and there will be more than ever. But if you're relying on rejects from another company, it's not going to make you look like a competitor, is it? The word monopoly is one which you have to be so careful when you use it. And I do believe there's so many advantages to this new idea, this new concept that WWE have to expand across the world. And I do think it's a lot better than the NXT one because this way, at least the independent scene will survive. But it will survive in a way where it's kind of being controlled by WWE. It really does risk a you're with us or you're against us mentality. And of course, we've seen TNA partner with NXT recently, which is fantastic. Really, really exciting stuff it is. But it now means that TNA can't compete with WWE or WWE events in any way, shape, or form. And additionally, we all know now WWE's forming a relationship with TNA's top stars. We saw it with Jordan Grace. I'm sure we'll see it with Joe Hendry. As soon as their TNA deals are up, they will go to WWE, and WWE will have used this relationship with TNA to get closer to them. And TNA undoubtedly aren't naive to this too. They know what's going on, but they know that it's worth it for them right now because it's also helping them in a lot of ways too. So there's so many different ways of looking at this. There really are. There's so many positives and there's a few negatives. And I think we should not ignore these negatives, right? Because a lot of people are that are trying to gloss over it like, no, they won't do that. Of course they will do it. They are a business. They are owned by TKO. Ari Emanuel, he has a history of screwing people over with this type of thing. Of course he does. All businessmen do. But I don't know how I feel about it. But if you did enjoy this video, please leave a thumbs up, like, and subscribe, and comment your thoughts down below. I would love to hear them, and I'll see you guys in the next one.